Great. Oh, great. Let's move on then to the next slide. I'll quickly introduce myself. I am Amber Kester. I have been teaching social studies for a number of years and joined the coding cohort. And I think I was I have it on here, 2016, 2017 graduate of that. That was really opened my eyes to what I could provide to my students outside of just content area. I was also starting to become involved as a Technovation mentor and have done so. This is my 6th year doing that. So have had a lot of fun and success with that as well. And with that, I've been trying to expand my program. Just like Amanda was mentioning, what can I offer to those boys who are interested in the same thing? So I did a CS First coding club that was really successful last winter, and was going to do that this spring, but things changed for us regarding that. And then I also teach some camps through Code Savvy at the Works Museum, and we're working on how to develop those virtually, so completing those types of camps online. So that's just a little bit about myself. I love the fact that I can continue my interest in computer science and coding outside of the classroom, because the content is just so much to cover in class. So just like Don was saying, that's something that I look for as well. And I am so excited to have a co-facilitator. Shambi, welcome. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. So my name's Shambi B. I'm a web developer who's actually located in Columbia, South Carolina. So we're expecting 89 degrees today for our weather. I'm also the founder of Web Girls Code, and I tell people we give girls superpowers through computer science. So we offer web development. We use Scratch to introduce game development, animation, digital art, and we just started doing unplugged and online introduction to app development. So we go into the schools, we work with after-school programs, work with community programs, and then we do our own camps and workshops throughout the community. I'm also a mentor with our state's SC codes, which is a little bit different than the Minnesota codes, in that they're opening up for the entire state. They want all residents of South Carolina to have the opportunity to learn how to code. So they have free online lessons, plus they do cohorts, and I work as a mentor for anyone that needs help, and when we have sessions in person, and we're able to do that. So I'm really excited to be a part of this. I've worked on Unplugged, especially with the app development, Unplugged activities that have been able to be used from K through 12. Which has been real exciting this year to be able to do that. So I hope to be able to share some of those resources today.
Excellent, that is great. We're excited to have you as well. Just another reminder that we have shared notes for our session, so feel free to add to those notes that will be available to not only those that attend this workshop, but also those that have an interest and attended a different one today. So feel free to contribute. So I just put together a few tips and examples before we go into resources of hosting an after-school coding program. And specifically thinking about distance learning, I think Google is a great platform to use for collaboration. And this can be done through a shared Google Doc or shared slides, or even creating a Google Classroom for your club to use and share information. So that has been really a lifesaver for us in our school to use Google platform. Another tip that I found is to allow for exploration and choice. Just like Maria mentioned, they have their specific assignment, but then allowing them to have choice and exploration time really allows for that equity and also the creativity component of it. Another part that I really found was incredibly powerful is for the students to be able to customize whatever they're creating. Usually there's a set tutorial for any type of program or app that's created, but then allowing them to have that individualization through customization is really important, both for equity and also that whole social and emotional learning. Real life examples for whatever platform you're using. What the thing I think about this is, you know, they do like to game. They always, that's always a way in for a lot of coding clubs, but putting it beyond that gaming and saying, you know, how could you use this in real life? How could we apply this to something that can be useful or solve a problem in our community? Is another tip that I had. Another one, food. Food is always an important component. This food is the essence of establishing relationships and has been for all of time. And so the two types of food that I've found that are free from nearly all allergens, safe for anyone, are Oreos. I don't know what they're made out of, but but yeah. So Oreos or popcorn are just really easy. And then finally, a really important component that I feel should be used as far as both in distance learning and because you're not directly next to them. And I know David talked a lot about that debugging, but that just ties into the growth mindset terms. And so, you know, I created a list of those things that, and I love, you know, this connects so much with what David was saying with, you know, how are you going to approach a challenge that you run into? And so here's just some terms that really allow students to challenge themselves and go on beyond the bumps that they run into. Anyone have any really great growth mindset terms that they use?
I know one thing I found, especially with whether you're using Scratch or on code.org, but if they get stuck and they raise their hand and they're like, I don't know what to do, and I'll ask them, what are you trying to make it do? And they'll explain it. And I say, and sometimes it's simple as saying, well, what do you think will work?
Yeah.
We'll get them to look at those blocks of code again, and I'll tell that to instructors I get for summer camp that may not have a background and they get scared. I say, just ask them, well, what do you think you should do? I said, and usually they'll look at those blocks and all of a sudden go, oh, let me try this. So that's a real great thing that's worked for me.
Yeah, Shambi, I love that. And that reminded me also of just the way that I got into teaching computer science without any background in it is really allowing them to learn on their own and discover and explore. And so these terms and the way that you presented it was exactly how I got through teaching coding clubs. So hopefully people feel inspiration from that. Any other tips or examples, Shambi, that you can think of for coding clubs or?
One thing I found until everything happened with COVID-19, I was working with an after-school program that works with underrepresented students. And a lot of them have no computer experience. Like they didn't even know how to log in to an account on a computer. So after the first 1 or 2 workshops, you learn those kids that pick things up very quickly or have a little bit of experience. And kind of like what Maria mentioned is when you find those kids that grasp it real quick, then all of a sudden they become my assistants. And then they take ownership, they take pride, they take leadership. So then when the younger kids or the ones that don't have the experience, sometimes I wouldn't even have to ask, and those kids would jump up. The minute they know they're my assistant, they're jumping up to help. So that's another great way to get them involved, help them grow their leadership skills, but then also allow you to be somewhere else if you need to help somebody.
I love that. That's such a good point. Thank you so much. Yeah, Eileen said, what have you tried so far for growth mindset? And yeah, exactly. It's like when they talk through that, when they hear themselves say the words, then it's a great point for them to jump off and try something new. So
it really is. If I say rubber duck debugging, does that mean something to most people?
I haven't heard that, but please share.
Gotcha. Okay, so it's kind of like a weird programmer trope joke almost of like keeping a rubber duck or other inanimate object in front of you, that when you get stuck, you explain the problem to the duck. Because most of the time, if you can actually force yourself to articulate, this is what's actually happening, or this is what I want it to do, and this is what it's doing instead, you can usually solve it. You know, it's when you let yourself get stuck at, well, I don't get it, or well, it doesn't work, that you're really actually stuck. So I've seen a lot of high school teachers who keep little kiddie pools of rubber ducks in the front of their classroom that the students can just grab on their way in. Sometimes it's less literal, but yeah, getting people to talk through things out loud definitely is a powerful tool.
Wonderful. Great. And, you know, I know that there's other tips and examples, so please make sure you add those to the shared document. But let's go on to the resources, because I think, there we go. There's a lot of resources, and any of these are especially helpful for setting up coding clubs outside of school. I mentioned I've used CS First with Google. The thing that I like about this is that it is kind of a package deal. You get flyers to send out, you get stickers for completion, they have student books that they can go through. There's also choice involved because you know, you can set up curriculum for different themes like sports or games or art. So I like that. And it uses Scratch, which has so many uses. I am not an expert on Scratch, but the reason that I was able to jump into this is because it's student exploration. And so I can have that environment for them to learn and allow them to learn on their own. Technovation Family is a new, it's a new event. And what it does is students in groups with adults and children explore all the different concepts of AI to solve problems in their communities. I really am interested in looking into this, and I think that in my community, this would be a great way for families to become involved and really cover that equity component because it's collaborative and introduces computer science across generations, which I really like. Technovation Girls is something that I'm probably most familiar with. And this is something that I just am so passionate about. And it's really putting that computer science into problem solving and looking at the community and also teaching computer science. But the thing that I like about this as well is that it goes into really planning a business. You become an entrepreneur with this program. So there's a lot of great resources with that. All right, Shambi, you're up.
Yeah, so I'm going to kind of combine the link for Web Girls Code and code.org together. A lot of us are familiar with code.org because of the Hour of Code activities. And we have a school district here that only allows code.org for their students to use. So I've had to really kind of figure out what's going to work. And so I've used App Lab for about the last 9 months with AP, CS computer science students, all the way down to your older elementary and middle school students. So on the Web Girls Code link, it's actually going to take you to a page that has a zipped file of some quick and easy instructions that I've used if you don't really have the time to dig into App Lab and figure out how to tell the kids to get started. So one of the flyers, we did an unplugged activity with the Girl Scouts. And so we were dealing with K through 5th. And we had a worksheet where they had to come up with an idea for an app for good. And then they had to sketch their 2 screens if they were to actually make this app. They had a home screen, and then whatever you did, clicked on that, what would the person see on the second screen? So you can do this with your students, is have them sketch out 1, 2, however many screens they would need. With the AP students, they had to do eventually a 5-screen app. And so one of the flyers is actually what was sent out to the troop leaders for the older kids after they had sketched their idea, the instructions for them to actually log on to code.org and get started to build the app that they had sketched out. The other PDF that would be in that file when you download it on the website is going to be what I use with the AP computer science students to get them to App Lab, but then to go through the tutorial. So there is kind of an hour of code like tutorial where they go through each lesson, learn how to use App Lab, watch the videos. And so it's kind of a quick way to get the students there so they can self-guide, do the tutorial, and then start building their app. And so that's what those two resources are. If you are dealing with AP computer science students, a lot of them are using App Lab to do their College Board project that they have to do, and there's a lot of resources out there for them. But as far as like the after school and the unplugged, App Lab is a great way to introduce the concepts of computer programming. Part of our worksheet has pseudocode, so we introduce pseudocode to the kids. With the younger kids, it was more so we wrote the pseudocode and then had them circle the missing word so they could see how that related to what they had just sketched. So there's ways that you can kind of create these worksheets to introduce all those concepts that happens in a real, anyone who's really developing an app. And then for the older kids, move them on to App Lab where they can actually build the app. And it's a web app, and I always tell people, I have it on my phone. Like once the student creates the app, they are actually able to get a text, a link. So I have the computer science students apps on my phone, and they're creating web apps so they can actually see how it is in real time.
That is a great resource. I can't wait to check that out. Do you want to talk about your Web Girls Code programs?
Sure. So when I go out and I talk to mixed gender classes, the boys always look at me crazy when they see the name and I explain what we do. So I always tell them we focus on girls. We don't tell boys no. But then, of course, the initiative is just to get more girls involved in computer science. And with our Scratch, like you mentioned with Scratch, I love Scratch. And it's a great way, especially if you're wanting to do after school, or like Dawn mentioned, if you're a media specialist, you're trying to figure out what more kids can do. Scratch is great because when you go to the site, they have simple tutorial videos. And so we've been able to use Scratch with CS First, which I love because we'll be using that again this summer. We do summer camps every year with CS First. And it is a great way for kids also who want to go into the arts. So we also focus on animation and digital art because I've had two girls who started with my first camp in 2016 who are now digital artists. They're teenagers, they're selling their art on the internet, they're all over Instagram selling their art, and it all started because they were introduced to Scratch. So once you get kids started, you'll find that they're at home, and instead of watching TV or YouTube, they're on Scratch because they realize they can create, they can upload their own art and animate it. So it's really exciting thing that I really, like I said, I love Scratch, and that's one of the main things that we use with our after school and our camps.
Perfect. And I know we have just a little bit of time left, but we want, we want to give you guys a chance to share. So here's some questions to open it up to anyone joining us today. What have been your greatest successes or challenges? And have you had any success with distance learning with after school clubs?
So I will just mention one thing. As an organization, we started piloting how can we do online learning, and more so it's because I was getting a lot of requests from homeschool parents. What are you offering this for homeschool? So as you're working things out, especially depending on how each state handles the start of the new school year with distance learning, what I did find worked. We normally have an all-day Saturday web development camp that we do from 10 to 4. So we piloted, can we do it over 3 days? And I'm trying to remember now, I think we did 2 hours a day. Yeah, that's what we did with the kids. And we always start at 8 years old and up. So our range, I think we had kids that were around 5th grade. We actually had someone who was high functioning autism that was also part of it. And that the kids did very well. We sent instructions. They had homework a week before to get their computer set up the way that we needed it to be, make sure they had Notepad, that type of thing on their computer. But because kids are so used to technology, it was kind of natural for them to be able to listen to the same instruction you would give in a classroom, but to give it online, for them to watch you and then they're over here typing in their code. And so that's just like a positive. I was so nervous of how it would go. I allowed for breaks. You know, we got to a point, I said, okay, 5-minute break. And during that time, I would play a video. Those kids that needed to go, you know, take a break, they would. But it worked real well. And even to the point that even the student that had the high functioning autism, the minute we were over after the 3 days, his grandmother was emailing me, okay, when's your next class? So yeah, so the kids really, you know, we hate that they have to be inside, but if you have, whatever is going to end up happening for the 2021 school year, just look at ways and things that you would do in an after school program, adapting it, because the kids are ready for it and kind of getting used to that.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. I'm glad to hear that you've had success like for that, as I'm contemplating how to conduct an online camp this summer. Anyone else have anything to share?
Shambi, I'm glad to hear that you have had some success with doing this in a more synchronous setting, because I really haven't. We've tried to do online Coder Dojo meetings, and I don't think we've had a single person participate in any of them yet. But there is some traction with, if I share, you know, here's a fun tutorial or here's a quick video. Sometimes we see people engage with those and maybe even share a screenshot from their finished project, but I haven't gotten anybody to do anything in real time. How did you do that?
Well, the first class actually came because I did an event at a homeschool specific event. So that's where they came from. And a lot of it is just, even with just marketing, you know, Instagram. And I have to remember, when you're out there telling people what you have for students, you're really talking to their parents, and really focusing on getting to the parents, whether you're, you know, tweeting or Instagram, putting it out there for them, because if the parents are excited, their kids are going to be there. So that's been successful, whether in person or online.
That's a good point. Yeah, especially now that they probably have to sit next to them the whole time and not just drop them off. It's double important that you find parents who want to do the thing too.
Yeah.
Oh man, maybe we have opportunities here, just kind of trying to think about broadening participation, because that's one of the questions. Maybe we have opportunities to like draw in more parents, and maybe even get some parents who would never ever think about taking a coding class for themselves to kind of do it as like a mommy and me.
Yeah.
That's a great
One of our
idea.
students, one of our students, I think that's what kept him going, was his mom was like, I think, more excited than he was. You know, and because anytime, you know, she was never in camera, but anytime there was an issue, she would run right over, and you could tell she got really excited to try to solve this or that. And I think that's a definite key, is because there are so many parents who wanted to get into computer science and was never offered, or just don't have the time. And if they could be there with their child, and I think that was Amber with the Tech Innovation, that was one of the initiatives. I think that might be key too, was kind of doing it.
It's a really good point. I love that.
Maybe Jean, we should make a note of that as a thing to think about for CS to go.
Yeah, for sure. All right, well, we are at our ending time here, but if there's something that you weren't able to share, please add it to the shared document. And you know, it sounds like we have some exciting things that we might be able to collaborate on, getting parents involved in such, and offering these distance learning opportunities. So thank you all for coming. And especially Shambi, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm excited to be a part of it.
Yeah, and I can't wait to check out App Lab and your resources on your website. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right, and I think we go back then. Eileen, do we go back then for the other Zoom? The main
Actually,
group
the main room, I think it is.
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
A couple of minutes to wrap up together.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you all for joining.
Thank you both for facilitating.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
This was really fun.